Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. It's 2024, and I tell you, each day, each week keeps rolling through just like every year does. But the key, I told you, this first quarter, we really wanted to get guests on that's going to make an impact for us for the rest of this year and really for the rest of our lives. And I think I've really done that again today. So our guest with us today is Aaron. Aaron, would you share with our listeners what problem will you help them solve today?
Thanks, Gary. The problem that I am super passionate about, not just passionate, but feel called to help solve, is to help entrepreneurs deal with their unhealthy stress, find personal flourishing, and live what Aristotle calls the good life. And that's the complete life, to flourish regardless of circumstances, uncertainties. Entrepreneurs deal with them on a day-to-day basis. So how do we flourish personally and professionally, regardless of those circumstances? And so that's what I'm really focused on, entrepreneurs, how to help them solve it by using the science of well-being, which is positive psychology, which is my background as an entrepreneur. And that's a real problem. Burnout, all those things. I want to help solve those kinds of issues so they can thrive in their business and thrive at home and in their personal lives.
Well, I know I'm going to love this conversation, Aaron, because we know right now in early 2024, a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs are not sure what's going to happen. It's a presidential year in the United States, and that turmoil, unrest, all those things that's going on. So this is going to be a great conversation at this time. Today, our guest is Aaron Marcum. He holds a master's in positive psychology from UPenn under Dr. Martin Seligman. And with 2 decades of business scaling experience, he's an award-winning leader and speaker empowering entrepreneurs. Aaron has just recently launched his book, Thrive, today. And I can't believe we got him here today because it's just recently launched on the podcast. And I can't thank you for taking time for us today so we can have this conversation. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure being here. Love having these conversations. Passionate about it.
Well, I know you are, and we talked about it offline a little bit. We have some similar philosophies that we both have, but why don't we start in the area of sometimes it's best to make sure that people really understand what we mean by positive psychology and really get into that. And if you would share why you think that is so important for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I often, when I tell people I have a master degree in positive psychology, it's like, is that the master of happiness? And
Right.
and it's really not, although that's an element to it. But positive psychology is really, I call it the science, and many people, Dr. Martin Seligman, who's the founder, or really the father, is what is more the proper title of positive psychology. But it's the science of well-being. It's the studies and research and many have been done on why some people thrive and why some people don't. And rather than, and Marty would say this as well, I believe, is that positive psychology is more the proactive part of psychology rather than the reactive. And that's why he really got into that 25, 30 years ago, is that he was seeing so much of the reactive part of psychology, the behavioral, and trying to treat people after they already had a problem or a challenge. And positive psychology gets in front of that. And how do we thrive regardless of what's going on in our lives, and really live what Aristotle termed as the good life ultimately. And that's at least my goal as a positive psychology practitioner, to help entrepreneurs and specifically live that good life or create the good life.
Yeah, and that creates a real challenge for entrepreneurs because, of course, they're normally trying to grow or scale their business like you've done. And we put all of our efforts in one thing, and it makes it tough sometimes to really be able to make us go forward to be able to do it. Why don't we give them a little basis, if you don't mind, is really kind of what you mean by that good life to an entrepreneur. And I know there's 8 different stages or laws that's kind of there. We may not be able to cover them all, but you can definitely talk about
Yeah.
some of them that you think are so important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They're great questions. So yeah, the good life for an entrepreneur is really has, I think it's directly tied to the uncertainties. Like, how do we deal with those uncertainties? Because the life of an entrepreneur isn't for everybody, especially someone who gets thrown off kilter, I guess you could say, with uncertainties, because every day we're dealing with them in our businesses. And so how we navigate through those and what kind of approach we have in our business, and do we really show up both personally and professionally in the way that we want to show up? Usually as entrepreneurs, we have great intentions, but really, are we living into those intentions? And I'm really coining it as the good life mindset, because really living the good life or creating the good life, first you have to create it and then live it, is creating the good life is a mindset. And it starts with the first law that I have of the 8 laws in the book, entre clarity. And I use the word entre in front of all of it because entre is opens the door. If you look up the term entre, it's opening the door to whatever that is. And so creating that clarity as an entrepreneur. And I start off in every law I break down in this crawl, walk, run, fly. And that's a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. And so I use that framework for every law in the book. So with entre clarity, the crawl part is find out what you want. Put your business aside for a minute and establish your guiding truths. That's the term I use in the book. And I've had my guiding truths for years, but they kind of have ebbed and flow early on as an entrepreneur. As even though I had them years ago, I did E-Myth Revisited and worked with Michael Gerber and his group over there and created my primary aim back then. And that's evolved into my guiding truths. And there's been moments of my career and as an entrepreneur where I lost sight of those guiding truths. And so as much as you can connect with them, like, for example, my first one is my mind is at peace. Another one's my family receives of my time. My life is filled with abundance. I'm a Christian, so in one of them's my heart belongs to Christ. So whatever those truths are, you want to be true about you, and you can establish those first. That's the crawl part. And then onto clarity, we go into the kind of the walk and then the run. And the walk part is that self-awareness of who we are today and accepting that. So self-awareness and self-acceptance kind of they interlock with each other. And so in order to get clear on really what we want, we have to accept what we are right now. And I think it's really important and embrace that, almost give ourselves a hug, and saying, hey, this is who I am today, but what do I want to be in the future? And as entrepreneurs, we usually have these big goals, and the run part of entre clarity. And I bike, you can see the medals in the background here. I got into cycling about 2016 when I started making some life changes in my own life. And I use the term breakaway, which is a cycling term. In the Tour de France, if they want the yellow jersey, they have to have these breakaways throughout the race. And so what breakaways do you want to have? Some of them are small, some of them are larger, but they get you to the bigger goal or get you to your guiding truths. And so we actually have a tool that we'll share with your listeners that help them create the guiding truths and that breakaway. But that's the clarity. Like that, to me, that's the foundational cornerstone law that I go more into in the book.
Well, so important, because the challenge I see is I have a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you've seen this too. They have a vision of where they want to go, but they don't have the entre clarity. They don't have the clarity part, and they get stumbled up right there. So I love that that's your base foundation, because if you don't have the clarity, you can't ever reach the vision that you have. And, I agree in visualizing what you want to achieve and all those things. but you have to have the clarity of the steps you're going to get there. And I love that concepts of crawl, walk, run, to be able to
Yeah.
fly.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about clarity, I think that's so powerful from an entrepreneurial standpoint is that so much of our or what we call clarity is driven by our business goals, right? Or what we want out of our business, or what we want our business to do, or how we want to serve our business, which I think is completely backwards. Our businesses are there to serve us as entrepreneurs. And so what are we doing to get first clear on what we want and being okay with what we want? So coaches should have coaches. So my coach is Dan Sullivan, the author of 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Yep.
And he has been saying for years is that don't apologize for wanting what you want. And so the guiding truths is like, what do you really want? Before you go into your core values of your company, you should really get clear on that first.
Yeah.
So
That becomes
yeah,
so crucial, because if they don't have that foundational component, you can't move on to the next. So
yeah,
share another one that you'd like to share in it. You don't have to share them in order. If you want to, that's
yeah,
fine too. You decide.
yeah. I mean, I'll rattle them off and come back. But so
Okay.
Entre Creates the second one, Entre Grit the third, Entre Connections is the fourth, Entre Faith, which is about God, but also about faith in others and faith in yourself. Entre Habits,
Mm.
Entre Vigor, which is like vitality, but I have some really interesting points on that one. And then Entre Agency, that one's actually inspired by Marty, the father of positive psychology. He's done a lot of work on agency, and agency to me is like the keystone of all the laws. It's like holds a lot of the things together. And so let's just talk about the last one. So we've got the cornerstone, the keystone. Agency, that's for an entrepreneur is imperative. Like if we don't feel like we have the free will to make choices and we're limited by those choices, then we're not able to really lean into our creative genius. We're not able to really create what we want to create. And there's been periods of our history as a human race where agency has not been as prevalent. Dark ages, where sometimes our free will was taken from us because they didn't trust that we could make our own decisions. So again, agency as an entrepreneur is important, and it's broken up. Marty breaks this up into three different components, and I build that out from the entrepreneurial world in the book. But these three components are self-efficacy. That's a positive psychology term, but all that really means is believing you can figure it out as an entrepreneur, having the agency that you have the resources, the people, access, the knowledge, the ability to learn and learn quickly, the ability to figure it out. One of my greatest successes in business was I created a company that has made a significant impact in the in-home care industry. It's like the J.D. Powers of home care. And the company is like literally changed the landscape with its ability to raise the standard of care. And they work with now like 4,000 companies. But when I first started that, the only thing I had done before was I owned a home care agency. But I'm embarrassed to say my stats, I didn't take stats in college. Math was not my superpower. But when I wanted to create that company and I created the entire benchmarking study for the industry without any of that background, but I just knew I could figure it out. And that carried me so far. Now, eventually I had to get the right people to really do a much better job than I could do by myself. But that's really important. So that's the first part of agency. And then the second part is optimism. Like the Learned Optimism is a book that Marty's written, and it's really important that as entrepreneurs that we lean into optimism and be realists as much as we can. But the difference between an optimistic entrepreneur and a pessimistic entrepreneur is that an optimistic entrepreneur looks at most setbacks, 95% of setbacks is temporary, like COVID, temporary.
Yes.
Um, And when they look at it as a temporary setback, they can figure, going back to self-efficacy, they can figure it out. A pessimistic entrepreneur looks at setbacks as more permanent, where they're like, and then they get stuck, and then moving forward is extremely difficult. And then their agency is limited in a major way when they don't have that innate in them. And the third one is imagination. For an entrepreneur, if we aren't able to lean into our creativity, and I call it the creative genius as entrepreneurs, solving problems, things like that, we're in the business too much and we're not really creating, then that will stifle our agency and our ability to create amazing things as entrepreneurs. So, which is
There's
the
some
second law is
great,
entre-create. Those two are very much aligned.
oh man, some great information there. I will definitely be ordering my book. I know it's available
Yeah.
now, but just what you said there for entrepreneurs of this agency side of the self-efficacy, but really it's about figuring things out because
Yeah.
that's what we are. We're problem solvers.
Yeah.
And you have to look at yourself there. And number two comes so much in that because if you don't have that optimistic side, really it's about learning from mistakes. We're willing to learn. We're going to make
Yeah.
mistakes. I mean, when I
Yeah.
started my business, I can give a bunch of mistakes that I made, but I was willing to overcome that to continue to get better. And then that creative side today, that is what's creating. And the next businesses that are done are going to be created. If you
Yeah.
look at any of the social media channels or you look at the Airbnbs, all those things have been created. They found gaps in the marketplace because they're being creative on how they're going out to get those. And the world's going to change as AI is coming into place now. And we have to realize that as business owners and entrepreneurs. So some great information. Please share the name of the book so they have that, but we'll also have it in show notes because it's now available and out to get. I can tell you, I'm going to order mine, but where can they get them? I'm sure any of the online bookstores or anywhere they're available.
Yeah. So Amazon, you can actually just go to our website, entrethrive.com. We have the links there. We also have, for your listeners, entrethrive.com/small business answer man. They can just put that in the URL and they'll be taken to the Entre Clarity guide they can download for free. And what that does is it's going to help them establish their guiding truths as well as their their breakaways. And we have a wonderful tool of creating their next breakaway. And that's and then we're also we're hoping over the next couple weeks that we will have the AI tool completed with the guiding truths. So you can actually go online and build out your guiding truths using AI, powered by AI, which is pretty exciting. I always thinking, I'm an entrepreneur. I was thinking of new ways to leverage the technology out there. So.
Well, that sounds great. So it's a great read. I know you're going to have to get it. I, of course, haven't read it yet because it just came out, but I'm in the process and we'll be getting that book. And I want all entrepreneurs because I love what you do about setting it up. It's really about that well-being, that we look at ourselves. And today that's so important because I'm seeing in my line of work that entrepreneurs are feeling beat down. And when they feel like their well-being's not there, they can't bring their best self to work. And then it gets in that thought of, maybe I need to get out or sell or do whatever. And we need entrepreneurs in this world. That's what makes our economy go.
Oh,
and
yeah.
especially
Our
in
GDP
our country,
is 2/3 of it's small business, right? So
small business owners make it happen. But before I let you go, we're not finished up yet. But in the book, I know you talk about this lie of the either or. Can you share with us what you mean by that and a little bit of context behind that? Because that's something that interested me as I was doing some research.
Yeah, the lie of the either or in simple terms, and I go more in detail, obviously, but it's that lie that we feel as entrepreneurs that we can either have it flourish personally or professionally, but we can't have both.
Mm.
We can't really and we may unconsciously be living that lie. And we unconsciously live the lie when we are leaning so much into our professional side and obsessive about building our business, that obsessive passion. rather than finding the harmonious passion, which is
Mm.
investing in both, like making sure that when we're home, we're home. For years, I was not that way as an entrepreneur. Early on in my journey, is that even though I was putting 80 hours in a week, those extra hours I was at home, I was still not present up here. My mind was elsewhere. It was on the business. And so being able to be present, I don't live this perfectly. I have my wife is constantly like, "Are you here?" And so it's constantly coming back to, am I present with the people that are most important with me? And I'm living um, a more, and again, I don't use the word balance. There's no such thing, but living a life that's congruent with who we want to be. And I use that word congruency quite a bit and a few times in the book, where I think as long as we can live a congruent kind of life where we are who we are publicly and personally, that we're showing up for our kids, we're showing up for our team members in the way that we want to show up, whatever that is. And so the lie is feeling like we can't do both. And so as entrepreneurs, what ends up happening? We go to the professional side. Like we
Yes.
just get pulled over there and we just let our well-being suffer and our health suffer. In 2015, I got to the point where my health was not good. I got into cycling in 2016 as a way to kind of give me some space from my business, because to train for races, there's quite a bit of space you have to create. But I had to do something else. I had to, and I had to lean into more of my personal side. Anyway, there's a lot more to that, but yeah, it's too many of us live that lie.
Well, and you're talking to the audience that they live it every day. I see it every
Yeah.
day. I've done it myself. Some of the same stories. We just change a few diagrams and stuff. Mine's 2002, 75 pounds too heavy, and the
Yeah.
stress load of a growing business and trying to scale it, and a young family, and the same thing, not being present, not being there, and really going after, sometimes as entrepreneurs, what we do, I believe, is we go after success, we think. And when I get this, then I will do this and
Yeah.
stuff. And really, it's about, really, just like you said, is what's the significance we want to live to harmonize our life, versus saying when we get that. Because the challenge is, if we ever get to that, it won't be enough at that time. And
Yeah.
or they'll lose their family in this standpoint of, my company's named the Send Business Strategies, because if you send to the top of the mountain and you get there by yourself, from what I understand, it's pretty darn lonely, because
Yeah.
everybody else is down below, meaning you lost out on those type of things with your
Yeah. On
family
those
and friends.
relationships. So important. And I know as entrepreneurs, we need to see the financial impact. And me personally, when I started investing in my personal flourishing starting in 2016 and really going more all in my health and so forth. If you look at the trajectory of my business at the time, it was like hockey stick growth. We had already established pretty good growth up to that point. But when you look at when I really started becoming a better person, better leader, more present with all my relationships, that financially grew.
Yeah.
So they are aligned. You get those things aligned, your business will flourish in almost every case. And we forget that. We think our personal side will eventually catch up with it. And
Well, and I'm
that's a
sure what
mistake.
happened too, your imagination and creativity, did
Yeah.
it do the same? That
Yes.
helped.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Same
And
way.
the space to do it.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, I know you and I could talk probably for several hours and have this
Yeah.
great conversation, but we know we've got busy entrepreneurs. I think we've whetted their appetite. The thing I'm going to tell you is go out and get his book, Entre Thrive. We have it all in show notes. So if you're exercising now, or you're in between meetings and catching us on the car, that's okay. We've got it all in the show notes. Go there to be able to reach that. Also, we've got his website there, entrethrive.com/small business answer man. We'll have that link there that you can go, you can get that clarity, Entre Clarity guide for yourself, that's going to be available for you, and be able to really take a look at that. And I've seen that already. I did see that. and pulled it up and stuff. Some great information there and real easy to work through that worksheet. And I love how you kind of showed an example because it helps entrepreneurs kind of get started and then walk through it. So some great information there.
Thank you.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being on our podcast. I have one more question for you that I'll always ask every guest and it's really about small business and owners and entrepreneurs. You're one yourself. What's your best advice you would give them?
I go back to that crawl, walk, run, fly, almost in anything in life. It's like so often as entrepreneurs, we are what's called quick starts, most of us, where we want to jump all in and we want to just run as fast as possible. And sometimes we have to go slow to go fast. And so if we take that kind of approach to say, okay, what is the first thing I can do to take action? Because sometimes the run part is overwhelming. And then we don't take any action, on our well-being or our professional side and growing our business. So what is that crawl that we can at least first start with? And that's really helped me become a better father, husband, entrepreneur, businessman, and so forth.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for sharing your expertise to our listeners. Thank you for joining us today. I know it's got to be a busy time. You're on a lot of different podcasts with the book just launching. So thank you for being on the Small Business Answer Man podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. A lot of energy. Appreciate it, Gary.
Hey, please go out there. If you're an entrepreneur and small business owners, and that's why this is the Small Business Answer Man podcast, go out and buy that book, entrethrive.com. I will be getting my copy. I can tell you my mastermind group will be getting it this year as one of the books they read. We do 6 books a year, and it's going to be one of those books I'll tell Aaron right off, even without reading it, because the philosophies fit. That's the key. And we've got to figure out the personal side to make the professional side be even better. So many people think, oh, if I figure out my business, then I'll figure out the other side. And I know that it's just like Aaron says, you've got to work in tandem on both of those at the same time. So we appreciate you being here today. Remember, you don't want to climb that mountain by yourself. I talked about that a little bit earlier. When you help others achieve success, you find the significance in your life. Come back next week and we'll have another great guest for you. Make it a great day. Thanks for joining us.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.